Welcome, everyone.
Hi there. Welcome to All Things iOS and Accessibility. We're happy to have you join us. We have 4 presenters today, each sharing their own special stories. Our agenda will go as follows. We're going to introduce ourselves, share some personal experiences, as well as relate things to Jamf use cases, and then some concluding comments. My name is Tim Kilburn. I am a technology consultant for the Fort McMurray Catholic School Division in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada. That's up north of Montana quite a ways. I've been a Jamf user and a Jamf tech for about 4 years. Kelly?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Offerman, and I'm a senior business development executive focusing solely on Jamf's healthcare solutions. I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am an avid Apple technology user, and I'm excited to be chatting with you all today. Don?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Don Mueller. I'm a technical enablement manager here at Jamf. I am based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I look forward to sharing our experiences with the use of Apple technology. Hector?
Hi there, my name is Hector Barron. I am a field solutions engineer, and I am a big fan of Apple technology as well, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of our experiences with you and the way that we use our technology. To start, what we would like to share with you is basically 26% of adults in the United States have some kind of disability. And that's one of the reasons why this conversation is important. We want to make technology accessible to those people. Tim is going to tell us a little bit more about the other reasons why that matters.
Yeah, kind of the idea is, the question I'm bringing forward is, why are we doing this? Why are we here? I suspect that most of you have felt left out or excluded some point in your life, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Unfortunately, for those people with disabilities, they get more than their fair share of being excluded. Our hope today is that you will consider the needs and feelings of persons with various disabilities in your interactions, in your presentations, in your employment opportunities, and more. I'll start by mentioning, I didn't mention it at the beginning of when I introduced myself, but I am blind, and blindness is defined as the inability to see due to an injury, disease, or congenital condition. As well, visual impairment is the inability to correct your eyesight to a, quote, normal level. So there are, in a 2015 study, they showed that there were 250 million people worldwide with either a visual impairment or were blind, and 36 million of the 250 million people were actually totally blind. Being blind, for the most part, can be a limitation, but as we get used to using technologies and accessibility features, sometimes there are things that me, as a blind person, can actually turn into an advantage. For example, proofreading documents by me listening to a document using the Apple's built-in screen reader VoiceOver. By listening to the documents, what I do is I hear errors that people who are sighted that do the reading scan over and miss. The idea there is that listening actually does a better job of proofreading than just viewing. Now, you'll see a picture of me here with my iPhone and my guide dog. And the idea here is that I use my phone sometimes as both a GPS and a map. Sometimes I have to use the compass app if I get myself disoriented when I'm walking outside, and then I can check which is north, south, east, or west so that I can know where to go. And also I can use things like the Maps app or Google Maps to make it so that I can get around easier if I get myself disoriented. I do know normally where I'm going, but sometimes those Maps apps are important in a situation where I'm not familiar. I will now show a recording of a demo where I use VoiceOver on my iPhone and show you a few things with respect to apps within the iPhone. VoiceOver is Apple's built-in screen reader used by blind or visually impaired people such as myself to be able to use Apple's devices, including iOS, the iPhone, iPad, macOS, the watch, and it's also available on HomePod and Apple TV. Now, what VoiceOver does is it puts, in essence, an invisible layer over the screen. When a sighted person uses their iOS device, they would just tap on something like messages or that sort of thing.
FaceTime. Audible. Books. FaceTime. Calendar. Tuesday, August
But
2nd.
for me, as a blind person, that would be a problem because I don't know where everything is. But what it does with that invisible layer is if I touch it, as you were noticing there, it just reads the thing out. So what I'll do here quickly
Safari.
is I will open up Safari.
Safari. Computers. Visit. Link.
And we'll go into my instance of Jamf for my school, and you can see that I've got the smart groups and those kinds of things in here.
Computers.
And what it does
Link.
for me is it makes it, it reads out the various things on the screen.
Computers. Visit. Devices. Visit. Users. Link. Apps. Has Adobe Reader. Count. 20. Column 2. Name. Apps. Has Adobe Reader DC. Count. 110.
So I just swipe from right to left with my finger, and it moves across these things within the smart groups within my Jamf instance, and I can hear them. Now, normally I do this on the Mac when I'm dealing with Jamf because it's easier to work, but it is doable on the iPhone, and
Dock. Safari.
so it works. Now, the same gestures for going home and that sort of thing do work with VoiceOver on as well, but other gestures are different. So as I explained, for you folks as sighted people, you just touch the screen and you would touch on Safari and it would open. But for me, I bring focus to Safari and then I just double tap anywhere on the screen and it will actually open Safari. There are apps that are not
Seeing AI.
quite as
Page 2 of
accessible
3.
as
Dice
they
World.
should be.
June White. Dock. Phone. Page 2 of 3. Wordle.
I'll just go into Wordle here.
Wordle. Direct touch area.
And there's a direct touch area. And a direct touch area within iOS makes it so that it's the app developer can do the app both in Android and in Apple. And it makes it so that it works on both platforms. But Wordle did a terrible job of their direct touch area, and it is totally inaccessible to me, which is in a lot of ways to me unacceptable. Whereas
Messages.
we could go into things
Calendar.
like you saw
Tuesday.
me work in
FaceTime.
Safari.
Books. Audible. Books. Audible. Books.
I'll go into books here. Apple has
Books.
made
Today's reading. 5 minutes left.
every
Button.
one of their apps totally accessible.
Current and recent.
There
New
might be a
PDF.
few little
Apple Watch User
intricacies
Guide.
that things
New
don't
PDF.
work out quite
Mediterranean
as
Midland.
well.
Apple Watch User Guide by Apple Incorporated. 86% completed.
So
Button.
I can
Apple Watch User Guide.
go
Books.
into the Apple Watch
Apple Watch
User's
User
Guide.
Close. Button. Accessibility and related settings. Heading. Use VoiceOver on Apple Watch. Heading. VoiceOver helps you use your Apple Watch even if you can't see the display. Use simple gestures to move around the screen and listen as VoiceOver speaks each item you select. Books.
So this gives you a quick example of me using VoiceOver to do things on the iOS. And because of these accessibility features like VoiceOver, it's made the iPhone usable for a blind person. Because normally you would have thought, when you first think of it, how can a blind person use a touch screen? And this was an ingenious way of doing things, and it works perfectly for me as a blind person. So kind of concluding these things, you'll note when VoiceOver is talking, I actually have it sped up quite a bit, and it might be a little bit weird for you, sounds kind of garbled, but as you get used to the computer talking, you can actually get it even faster than that, and I don't actually listen to it as fast as many other people. So some highlights there is that the gestures are a little bit different, most of them. And so I have to know those gestures for me. And the other part is that That invisible layer makes it a lot easier so that I can just touch on the screen and hear what's there and then double tap instead of just touching on the screen at the exact location where Safari might be, because I wouldn't be able to tell that. Okay, I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Thank you, Tim. I always learn something from your presentations. As I mentioned, my name is Kelly, and I'm on the healthcare team here at Jamf. And I also happen to be dyslexic. And before we dive into some of the accessibility tools that I will be talking about that aid in my everyday technology use, I want to define dyslexia. Dyslexia is a way one processes information. This difference affects one's ability to process language and specifically decode phonics. So sounding out words, for me at least, is nearly impossible. And reading comprehension for folks with dyslexia is typically very low because they're concentrating so hard on it that they can't recall the paragraph that they just read. Now, it's also important to note that it's not related to one's intelligence and it is a spectrum. So, when I was growing up, I was always told by teachers and psychologists that my dyslexia was a disadvantage for me. I felt this as I was growing up. I couldn't read and enjoy the same books that my peers were. And as I've grown up, I've become more empowered in my difference. And I would wholeheartedly disagree with them now. I know that my dyslexia sets me apart from my peers and in my professional career. So, how prevalent is dyslexia? Anywhere from 10 to 17% of the population are affected by dyslexia. And those with this difference have the natural ability to tap into their mind strengths. This was dubbed by a fabulous book called The Dyslexic Advantage. I highly encourage folks to check it out. And MIND stands for material reasoning, interconnective reasoning, narrative reasoning, and dynamic reasoning. So for the sake of time, I'm only going to define my favorite one, which I know I definitely have, which is interconnective reasoning. And that's the ability to connect different items across different subjects in different categories and notice a relationship seamlessly that others just might not recognize. And that's because of the way we process information. Because we're taking longer to process the information, we can more seamlessly make those connections. So, for my presentation, I'm only going to be talking about a few of the tools I use every day in aiding in my accessibility needs, and two of which aren't typically viewed as accessibility tools. And one is Sidecar. Sidecar is incredibly useful for me, not just for the fact of being able to work on the go. I think we all can appreciate that now in this digital world of, maybe home office isn't always where you're most productive. But being able to see the side-by-side reference and visually confirm something I'm working on is incredibly important for me. In my day-to-day job, I'm building a lot of resources and documentation to help enable others to understand specific content. So being able to make sure that the spelling is accurate and the information or diagrams are visually representing what I'm trying to dictate is very, very helpful for me. So I highly recommend checking out Sidecar. It's very useful. So another item that is typically not viewed as an accessibility tool is the use of my HomePod Mini. I've talked a lot in the past about how Siri is my little spelling buddy. And to quote Bob Ross, I had a happy little accident a few months ago when I picked up my HomePod Mini when I was asking Siri how to spell something. And now that I've experienced that, I would never go back to using my watch or my iPhone, because having the ability to say, "Hey Siri, spell X, Y, and Z," you get a high quality, clear voice speaking the words at a pace that works for me. My phone worked and my watch worked, but the ability to use my HomePod with that clear audio is just, I would never go back. I highly recommend trying it out if you have a HomePod Mini and you're struggling to spell something. This isn't just for dyslexics. I mean, I think we all know we fumbled over some of those difficult words. So the last two items I'd like to talk about, I know these aren't iOS focused, but if we're talking about accessibility, we have to chat about them. So we all know that dictation is a hugely beneficial tool. And this is one that I utilize every day. It allows me to be more expressive in my writing, and I'm able to use my creative words in my writing versus just substituting it for something simpler that I'm able to spell. So in this little video, you'll see how I'm able to use the text to speech function in my Mac. Accessibility is incredibly important to me, and I'm excited to be chatting with you all today. And all you have to do to initiate it, it's completely native, built in, is just double tapping the function key. So the technology is evolving, and I find it incredibly useful. So the last few tools we'll be talking about in this presentation, again, I use many across lots of different platforms, is the ability to use text, excuse me, text to speech. There's two different ways that you can turn this on within your Mac. You have one that's natively built in and one that you do have to set up in your accessibility settings. So first we will watch the video and then I'll chat a little bit more about the setup. You can be using your text to speech function. This requires no additional setup. You can just highlight the item that you would like spoken, double click, go down to speech and click start speaking.
Accessibility is incredibly important to me, and I'm excited to be chatting with you all today.
Or if you go into your accessibility settings and set up the speech function, which I was talking about, you can hit your quick keys and then you'll see slight difference. And then this can be used across all of your applications as well.
Accessibility is incredibly important to me, and I'm excited to be chatting with you all today.
And if you notice, there was a speech box right down there that came up. You're able to slow it down, speed up, pause, or pick the different voices. Now, the two important differences I'd like to note with these is that one, you're able to use across platforms. So it's very, very helpful to, I think, set up the accessibility setting and have your, I dubbed them quick keys, but essentially you get to pick whichever keys you would like to help initiate this. And it's also really important to note that this tool is evolving. So in the past, you weren't able to pause it or speed up or have the words highlighted when they're reading. That's also incredibly helpful. So I'm excited to see where this technology continues to evolve. And similarly to what Tim had mentioned, that you're able to dictate how fast you would like something read. Typically, I read or have things read to me at a faster pace because I'm more accustomed to this because that's usually how well, that's not usually, that's how I get all of my information. And so being able to train your ears is really awesome as well. So I definitely recommend checking out speed listening and practicing it because it is a skill and it's incredibly useful. So those are the tools that I use, some of the tools I use every day to aid in my accessibility. Now, I still wouldn't opt to play Scrabble over Pictionary, but these tools have changed my personal and professional life. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our next presenter, Don.
Thank you, Kelly. So, hello everybody, my name is Don. So let's go ahead and actually dive right into this. So what is the definition of deaf or hard of hearing? So this can actually range from mild to profound hearing loss in one or both years. Not covering all areas, but generally speaking, the effect can actually range from individual born deaf or hard of hearing to illness, deafness due to an accident, and hearing loss related to aging. So everyone has different experiences than my own personal experiences. I personally have a severe to profound hearing loss in both ears, which was actually caused by medication to cure a respiratory infection that I had when I was a baby. So this led to permanent damage in my inner ears, and I'm actually fluent in both English and American Sign Language. So there are actually approximately 20% of the population that are affected by this of what we define for deaf and hard of hearing. So, although I actually have challenges in hearing, I actually view this as an advantage because I need to listen, and the attention to detail is a strength of mine because I can't really multitask in listening and working at the same time. So, some of the tools that I will be sharing with you today, one of them is sound recognition. I actually utilize this tool more when I travel because I can't necessarily take my accessible tools with me that I have built into my home. So, an example would be I have a doorbell at my home that when somebody rings it, there's an alerting system that lets me know when someone is actually at my door. So instead of taking that apart and bringing it with me, I leverage my iPhone, and I can actually have it enabled to pick up recognition of the door being knocked on. So when someone actually knocks on the door, I then get an alert on both my iPhone and Apple Watch, which is handy, especially since I don't hear very well. I'm able to catch those sounds by the vibration on my devices. Another tool that I use seems subtle, but with my family, we actually love to listen to music. Our kids, they just love to put on concert or dancing to the music. I could actually never really follow along until I actually discovered the use of my HomePod and Apple devices. Since roughly, I would say around iOS 13 to the best of my memory, and my first HomePod, along with many more, I've actually used this lyrics feature that is within the Apple Music. So when music is playing in the HomePod, I'll navigate to the control center that you can see here. And there's a icon on the bottom that actually is shown where when I tap on that, I'll get a list of HomePods that I can actually choose from. So when I choose the speaker that's playing the music, it actually opens the Apple Music app and I get this view. And then the lyrics icon on the lower left corner of this screen, I can actually just simply tap on that. And then when I click on it, I now can actually have the lyrics being seen where I can actually be involved with my family to enjoy the music. I know I may not be the greatest singer, as my kids like to tell me when I try to join them, but at least what's really cool about this is I can now read along and know what they're singing to. So that is everything that I plan to share. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Hector.
Hello, everyone. So what I want to talk about today is defining what a limb difference is. Basically, a limb difference is a partial or complete absence of a limb. This could be something that's congenital or something that is caused by an accident or acquired later on during life. About 2 million people live with limb differences here in the US. And one of the advantages of that is as technology moves forward, limb replacement may become an augmentation rather than a disadvantage. Now, I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite Apple technologies that I use all the time. And for that, I have to go a little bit into the past. Growing up in Mexico City, I was a super big fan of Knight Rider. It was one of my favorite shows. It was called El Auto Increíble. And I absolutely loved it, watched it all the time. And I just wanted to be like David Hasselhoff when I grew up. That was my goal. And one of the coolest things David Hasselhoff had was this watch that you could use to talk to his car. So I begged my parents to get me a watch. And when they finally did it, I was really excited. And then kind of disappointed because there were two issues with it. Number one, the interface on the watch that I got required that I did a lot of pinching motions to turn on things like the chronometer and things like that. And it was kind of frustrating because, when you have only one hand, it is really difficult to do actions without your fingers. The other disappointment was that putting on the watch was extremely difficult. It took a lot of effort to just put it on because the bands were really designed to be put on with an extra hand, which I didn't have. So I ended up kind of using my mouth to put on the watches, which would eventually break the band. And so eventually I just kind of gave up on watches and just began using my phone when I became an adult. But then lo and behold, the Apple Watch came out. And this shows that good design is definitely something that leads into accessibility. Because the Apple Watch only requires one point of contact. So I have the ability to use my arm to tap on different things on my Apple Watch, and the band is so easy to put on that I can actually put it on just with one hand. And this changed everything. So now I am going to celebrate by getting my official Knight Rider leather jacket so I can be cool like David Hasselhoff for the rest of the presentation, because I have Siri, el asistente increíble. All right, so moving on. We talked about a lot of really interesting accessibility features here. But one of the challenges that we have as administrators or people who manage Jamf in general is becoming aware of all of these things and doing it in a way that is inclusive to people who may need help. So, after doing a little real research, we found out that there is an accessibility assistant shortcut available. It's made by Apple, and it is available for you in the Shortcuts application. And then we figured out that we could actually use something like SelfService to be able to distribute this accessibility assistant, so everybody in your organization can have access to any kind of information they need about accessibility. So I'm going to show you a quick demo of what the end user experience would look like should you decide to share this accessibility assistant with your employees or students. And then Don is going to show us the process of how to get there. So moving on. Here's an iPad. You can see that it has SelfService installed in it. So an end user could just tap on SelfService, and that will open it up. They can choose to install the accessibility shortcut. And then after that is done, the shortcut is actually going to show up on the home screen. This is a web clip that can be clicked on. And the web clip is basically going to open Safari. And Safari is going to ask permission to install the accessibility assistant shortcut. Then the end user can just say, yes, go ahead and install it. And now the shortcut can actually be used. And this is very simple to use. All an end user has to do is tap on the shortcut. And the shortcut will give you a high level of different accessibility needs that you may have. And it will ask you what you need. So it could be something having to do with vision, hearing, mobility, cognitive. And then after that, it will ask you to select specific needs that you may have. And we're going to see this go through a few times because you can select different accessibility needs. And once you are done making your selections as an end user, it's going to ask you if you want to take this stuff into your Notes application or any other application that you selected. In this case, you just give permission to access Notes. And lo and behold, you have all of the documentation you could possibly want, either as an admin or as an end user, for the kind of disability and accessibility needs that you may have. There's videos, there's knowledge articles, and you can walk through everything. So that gives you the ability to gain access to all of this vital information for your end users, or maybe even yourself. All right. So now we are going to go ahead and have Don show us a little bit of the way it works. But before that, I do want to talk a little bit about the benefits of getting this. The first one, of course, is this can be done through self-service in a way where you may not need your users to disclose anything. So if somebody is not comfortable disclosing their accessibility needs, they don't have to do it. It addresses all kinds of different needs that we may not be familiar with as admins. This is also available to all users. And because it is a shortcut, little workflow, it can be modified to meet your needs, whatever they happen to be. You can either you can actually choose where this is going to output to. So it can go to the Notes application, or it can go to another type of document. And then finally, the other benefit is you can actually add your own resources. Now that we know the benefits, let's talk about the prerequisites. So what you need for this to work is to generate that link. And Don is going to show you that in a little bit. You will need at least one device that is signed into iCloud. The devices receiving the link do not have to be signed into iCloud. The device generating the link has to be signed into iCloud. You will, of course, need to have shortcuts installed in all of the devices receiving this link. And optionally, you can use Jamf Pro and self-service to distribute the link, although that's not necessary. And of course, you'll need some sort of application like Notes or something else to output the information in the shortcuts to. Now Don is going to take us through the whole installation of the shortcut from the admin side.
Thank you, Hector. So please note, these instructions are actually documented and available for you that you can refer back to when you signed up for this session catalog. If you decide that you actually want to build this workflow within your Jamf Pro environment to refer to that document. So the device here is actually signed in with an Apple ID. So what we will do is open that Shortcuts app and we'll navigate to the gallery, and you actually see that shortcut right here. You'll tap on the accessible shortcut you want to add. And then once you add that, you will see the 3 dots that we tap on here. And then you will actually want to share this. And there's a share button on the bottom with the square that an arrow is coming out of. So when we click on this, we will get a prompt of options to choose from. In the middle, you will actually see copy iCloud link. So click to copy this. And now you will see that the iCloud link has been copied, and you can just simply paste this in a note that is accessible. So when you begin to build out the workflow, you have this to refer back to. So within your Jamf Pro instance, we are going to navigate to Devices, Configuration Profiles, and then we're going to go ahead and click on New. You're going to see in the general payload, we'll give it a friendly name. So in this case, Accessibility Assistant Shortcut. You could distribute this to all devices or make this available in self-service. We're going to make this available in self-service. Now we're going to locate the web clip payload to configure this. So it asks for a label. We're just going to give it the same name, Accessibility Assistant Shortcut. That link that you copied earlier, we're actually going to go ahead and get that link from the notes that we saved it to. And then we're going to paste it in the URL as shown here. Thanks to our UX design team, they actually created this icon for us. We're going to go ahead and upload this into our Jamf Pro configuration profile. We found from testing that pre-compose icon, we like this better. So we're going to go ahead and check this. Next, we're going to go ahead and go to scope, and we're actually going to scope this to our test devices. But once we verify that the testing works, we can just change this to all devices to make available in self-service. Because we're doing this in self-service, we want to update the self-service description. Let's let our users know what it's for. To save time, I'm copying what I pre-typed out and I'm pasting it in here. Uploading the same icon that I just uploaded, just from a visibility perspective to make it look nicer. And then we will save this and then actually have it deployed. And then we're going to test this on a device that is not signed in with an Apple ID to make sure it works as expected. So it's twice as fast, but all we're doing is showing you the workflow works as expected for the outcome. So it's just like what you saw from Hector, where we're adding it into the shortcut and then we're running the script to see if it actually is able to produce exactly what we need it to do. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tim to start us off with some closing thoughts.
Thanks, Don. As you noted here, when we were doing our presentations, we sort of went over there's 4 different disabilities that we focused on here. And there are accessibility features built into Apple's devices that help us with these, with the technology so that we can actually use them. For myself, it has helped me in my professional life, and I believe that these accessibility features have also helped Don, Hector, and Kelly in their professional lives. So these kinds of things make it so that we can feel included and we are able to feel successful in our endeavors in life. Hector?
So yeah, thanks you everyone for giving us some of your time. We have a special request to make. Of course, this is completely optional. While we were preparing for this presentation, one of our team members lost a dear family member to cancer. So what we're asking is, if you want to do it, of course, completely optional, please go ahead and make a donation to the American Cancer Society. There's a URL, QR code on the screen that you can use. Otherwise, if you just go to American Cancer Society, there is a button for donations. So yeah, we want to thank you for your time, and thank you for letting us talk about accessibility. And we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.